Okay, I am
Yeah.
recording now. This is arplenoon, also known as Phoenix. How would you like to introduce yourself, baby?
Hello, my name is Daimon.
This time on my computer. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read more of my AU, and I'm going to keep it super casual because I'm finding out the pressure of having to go back and edit it like I did my last two videos is just so much that I'm not actually doing it. So I have my boyfriend here, so we're just gonna casually read off my AU, just so I can actually have it done and have it available to you guys. And I think it'll be less stressful for me. How does that sound?
I mean, it's a lot better than you trying to do the thing and then you getting burnt out because you're trying to do the thing in such a specific way that everyone usually has you doing the thing.
I have my coffee.
Take a big old slurp.
Okay. So yeah, the videos that are the videos that are currently on my YouTube are 13 Nights, and I believe it's Undercrete is the other one that I did end up doing. But no, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to have all the illustrations done and everything like this, but I'm like, most people are just going to be listening to this. They're not going to. So I might as well just record the audio and put it out there for people to have access to. So
Yay.
anyways, I booted up my AO3. We're going to be reading Flowerglitch today. Now, there's no pressure to you, but have you read through Flowerglitch? Or have you read any of my AU? I don't remember.
I read some of 13 Nights and I've read Undercrete.
Okay, okay. So this one's Flowerglitch. This is about our lovely papyrus named G, who appears in the Bridge Jumpers and briefly in Jumpers. And this can be found on my AO3. Just search for arplenoon called Flowerglitch. And let's go ahead and get started. Alright, Flowerglitch by arplenoon. Summary. Another Undertale AU. This time a Flowerfell variant focused on Papyrus. Papyrus and Sans don't have the best relationship, especially while their father, Gaster, is alive, pinning them against one another. However, after Gaster's death, the brothers begin to reconcile. But there's no happy ending for them, as their world will soon be doomed by an infectious flower virus. Also, there's an awesome showdown between Disbelief Papyrus and Fatal Error. It makes sense, I swear.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, I heard a hum. Is that from your side?
Wait, a hum?
Yeah,
Oh,
it sounded like a truck driving by your mic.
that's not good. It's probably my computer. It's probably my computer trying to sound like a jet engine. It
All right.
usually does that when it's trying to put a huge workload on.
Oh boy. All right.
I don't know what would be doing that. That's weird.
Papyrus doubled over, grabbing at his throat and wheezing. It was the worst pain he'd felt up to that point in his young life. The brothers weren't supposed to be roughhousing, knowing the fragile health of his older brother Sans. But Papyrus was in the habit of teasing Sans in order to get around this. He couldn't remember what he had said to make Sans so angry. His brother picked up a fallen piece of bamboo and struck it at his neck. Neither of them had expected the stick to be so sturdy. Sans laughed, watching Papyrus squirm on the ground, until he realized Papyrus couldn't breathe and passed out. Papyrus remembered waking up in his room, his father sitting beside him. A rod had been strung through Papyrus's jaw and into his neck bone. In the lantern light, Sans stood off to the side, gripping at his ropes tightly, his skull soaked in tears. Their father turned to scold him. "I'd beat you if you weren't so incompetently weak. Instead, you'll pay for this more severely. You're now your brother's keeper. Papyrus is the heir to this family, and don't think of sabotaging his health. If he dies, you'll be following him to the grave." Papyrus could feel the sting in Stan's expression. Had his had his actions really been so bad? Had Papyrus really almost died? Sans couldn't answer. The absolute heartbreak in his expression burrowed into Papyrus's soul. This is my fault. I made him angry. It's all my fault. It would be a month before Papyrus could speak again, and not very well. All the while he suffered seeing his brother's despair. One mistake had cost him everything. Papyrus wanted to say he was sorry, to beg Sans to forgive him. He didn't want to be the family heir. By the time Papyrus found his voice again, it was too late to apologize. It remained exceedingly difficult to talk, even on good days. Papyrus resorted to learning sign language, which meant Sans had to learn it too. He could tell his brother was begrudging in the he could tell his brother was begrudged in the beginning, but having a secret language that was all their own helped bond them in some way. They could talk dirt on other people without them ever knowing, even to their face. It made Sans laugh, and that was good enough for Papyrus. Despite the shift in their noble title, Sans still far exceeded Papyrus in intelligence, and Papyrus in turn in strength. Sans continued his studies in magic and administration while Papyrus learned the ways of the warrior. The eerie silence of the warrior skeleton earned him great respect among monsters. Even Sam seemed content with the arrangement. Years later, their father would go missing. He had been a cruel man to the both of them, leading Papyrus to suspect his brother of wrongdoing. But he said nothing. Maybe doing their old man in would leave Sans satisfied enough to allow Papyrus to lead their clan in peace. Even when suspicions were pointed at him, he would not confirm or deny any involvement. In fact, he'd rather be blamed than allow anyone to come after his brother. Unfortunately, it appeared that Sans hadn't completely covered his tracks. Mere days after Papyrus had been declared the head of house, General Undying and a platoon of soldiers arrived at their front door. We have a reliable witness that saw Sans push Gaster into the core. I have a warrant for his arrest. He's to be brought to the Emperor's palace. The warrior narrowed his eye sockets and gave a firm shake of his head. What witness? His deep voice gurgled. That's of no concern to you. These are direct orders from Emperor Asgore himself. You will not defy him. For Sans, Papyrus would absolutely defy the Emperor. But before he could protest, he heard Sans behind him. It's okay, boss. I killed the old man. It's best I go with them, not cause any trouble for you. Papyrus turned in surprise at the smaller skeleton. Why? Why did he admit so quickly? The expression on his brother's face showed he felt like a burden, and the warrior had never felt more helpless watching the soldiers take his brother in chains. He was doing some coffee.
Do a big ol' slurp.
Okay. As soon as they were gone from sight, Papyrus rushed to the stables. He saddled and mounted his white horse, Doomtrotter, before riding out alone from the palace, ready to do anything to defend Sans. Anyone get the reference? Doomtrotter.
Doomfanger.
Doomfanger. It's very serious. It's a very serious scene right now.
Yes, Doomfanger. With the fiercest bite.
Doomtrotter. The fiercest hooves. Moving swiftly would save the smaller skeleton's life, for the Emperor, so enraged from losing his most trusted alchemist, was prepared to dust Sans at the front steps. "Stop!" cried Papyrus, his voice so rarely heard it shook the guard to silence. He rushed to the stairs, threatening to run down Undying's men, and swung himself off the horse. Should I try to impersonate Papyrus? I'm afraid to.
Oh god. I mean, only if you feel that you can.
Okay. Punish me instead. If you kill him, you'll have to kill me too. His voice unintentionally growled. Papyrus, no! Cried Sans. But it was too late. Papyrus had spoken directly to the Emperor himself. Perhaps it was Papyrus's show of devotion, or it might have been the threat of both skeletons. Or it might have been the threat of that, if both skeletons were executed, the Snowden clan would be left in chaos. The warrior made a gutsy move, and Asgore had to consider his decision carefully. I'm impressed by your show of loyalty to your brother. However, I fear that loyalty is greater than it is to me. This cannot go unpunished. Papyrus of Snowdin, kneel before me, the Emperor commanded. Resigned to his fate, Papyrus knelt. Asgore seized the warrior by his skull in one claw before carving a curse with the other. 3 broken lines over the left eye. When the monsters were finally free from the underground, Papyrus would not be. His soul cursed to remain under the mountain. It was well enough for Papyrus. Sans was released, and he rode with Papyrus on his horseback to Snowdin in silence. Back in the stable, Sans turned sharply to Papyrus. Why did you do that? Why would you give up your chance at the surface? No, your life for me. After everything I've done to you. Papyrus stared at Sans, bewildered, and signed. Brother, had to. Had to? I killed our father. What about him? Sans signed aggressively. Papyrus narrowed his eyes and frowned. Hesitation. He wasn't sure how to answer, so he just told the truth, plain and simple. But I like you. Sans froze before signing. After I've been a jerk to you all these years, you like me? He held his hands up in confusion. True, Sans could have stood to be nicer to Papyrus, but... Papyrus knelt down, pulling his brother into the first willing hug he could remember. Understand, my fault. I'm sorry. He felt his brother shaking, first with fear, then with tears as he hugged back. You moron. I don't blame you. It was that bastard who was hell on us. It was that bastard who was hell on you, hell on us. I just couldn't stand it anymore. I know. Feeling his own tears, Papyrus pulled away to look at Sans in the face and signed. Let me protect you now. You are all I have. Sans wiped his face on his sleeves before signing. Stupid bonehead, and all I've been doing is protecting you. He smiled. Oh boy, something went beep beep on my desktop and I don't know what it was.
Oh God.
Oh
Also,
boy.
I think I know what that big hum was on my end. It might have been my furnace kicking in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because my furnace sometimes kicks on whenever it's too cold in the house.
Mm. After that, things were better. Papyrus finally had the brotherhood with Sans he longed for, until the day the flowers appeared. When the humans fell, they would always come from the ruins. But that was the realm of the Mad Empress, forbidden for any who served the Emperor. And so, Snowdin was the first threshold for any human who wished to pass. Papyrus had captured 2 human children, killed 2 others. 2 more at some point slipped past his guard before finding their fate with Undyne. He felt no qualms about his mission. All humans, children otherwise, had been responsible for the suffering of his people. That is what his father had taught him, and even if it meant he'd be unable to see his own freedom, he felt no less determined to save monster kind. But one day he woke in agony. Buttercups grew out of his spine, legs, and arms. When he tried to pull at them, he felt his soul being ripped as well. The yellow flowers grew everywhere despite the wintry conditions. Panic and confusion rose among the citizens of the town. Everyone had buttercups growing out of their bodies. Most suffering of all were his soldiers, unable to move and transforming into living flower patches. Where was Sans? Papyrus felt panic. His brother wasn't in his room that morning. Anyone who could still move reported they hadn't seen him. Riding out, Papyrus checked every sentry station to the ruins, then towards Waterfall. The buttercups had spread there as well. For fear the invasive plant was infectious, he rode back, only to see them on the road. Sans held the hand of an adolescent human monk, both covered in yellow flowers. The expression on his brother's face was tired, unamused. Bewildered by this strange interaction, Papyrus rushed up and signed. Sans, who is this? Do you know what's happening? What are these flowers? Bro, I can't explain. Just let us pass. I'm taking this human to the Emperor. What was he up to? He wasn't just going to let them pass without an explanation. Papyrus started aside. Then a strange flower with a face appeared over the monk's shoulder. He's just going to attack us again. Let's go. Again? The flower gave Papyrus a strange sense of deja vu. He leapt off his horse before looking at the monk, who appeared to have been made blind by the flowers. Are they the one causing this? I'm not going to let... Oh, enough! The flower cried. Strange red thorn vines erupted from the ground, knocking Papyrus aside. The human screamed. What the hell are you doing, Azrael? Cried Sans. He kills Frisk every time. Let's just go, yelled the flower. Papyrus recovered slowly after being knocked into a tree, looking up to meet his brother's eyes. He didn't understand that look of desperation as Sans turned and teleported the flower and the human away. Sans? Papyrus heaved. Despite lacking context, the warrior couldn't help but feel betrayed. Sans! His voice cracked as he stood, shaking. The crushing flowers under his clothes were extremely painful. The crushed flowers under his clothes were extremely painful. He gripped his face, falling back to his knees. He didn't know what was happening. Scared, confused, hurt, Papyrus' breathing grew heavy as he threatened to weep. Then an orange light appeared, a box with the word reset within it. Reset? Reset what? What magic was this? But what did he have to lose? Reaching out, he touched it with his hand and woke up back in his bed. The flowers were no longer crushed, but one extra grew from his right eye socket, partially blinding him. He rode out again, not bothering to hear the pleas of his servants. This time he knew where to find them. This time he remembered. Terror filled his brother's expression as Papyrus charged from hiding, slicing the monk child in half with his bone sword. And he woke again in his bed. Another flower from the wrist, making his fingers feel numb. What is this? The flowers, this reset magic. His voice hissed in frustration as he met them for the 6th time. Pap, we're not doing this on purpose. The flowers get worse the more we hurt them. Every time anyone touches that reset box. Please, just let me take them to Asgore. Why didn't you bring them to me first? He cried, already having his sword ready. Before Sans could defend himself, again Papyrus was dodging the rising vines. Sans teleported, Papyrus reset. There were no more words to exchange. This time Sans fought back. The warrior lost count of the resets he could remember, 12, 15. Each time he was getting weaker, until eventually Sans pinned him down with his bone magic. This time, Papyrus did not reset. The agony of continuing to repeat this scenario was too much. Nothing he did or said could stop Sans. Papyrus laid in the snow, feeling defeated and abandoned. Then he was just angry. Beating his fist against the ground until they bled, he cursed the human for turning his brother against him. But he wouldn't reset. Whatever this magic was, it was only hurting them both. With his damaged pride and more than a few more flowers growing on his body, Papyrus slunk back to the mansion, hiding in the darkness of his room. Days passed and the underground grew quiet. Papyrus expected at least some kind of word from the capital, about the human, about his brother, but nothing came. Eventually, Papyrus emerged. He ordered all who were left in Snowdon, less than a dozen peasants, to take up arms and follow him to New Home. Much like Snowdon, everything was covered in the buttercups. Every guard or sentry they passed were completely immobilized by the infection. There were no other survivors they could find. Making his way through the palace into the throne room, Papyrus feared the worst. As he imagined, he would find the Emperor, the human, and his brother collapsed in patches of yellow flowers. His mind tuned out the sound of his servants searching the rooms around them as he approached. The talking flower was nowhere in sight. Carefully, he kneeled down by his brother. He checked for a response, but Sans' sockets and mouth were full of the flowers as well. He hadn't dusted, which meant he was still alive. A living hell. Jaw dropped. Papyrus slowly shook his head as he looked to the human leaning against his brother's back, just as paralyzed by the flora. Lord Papyrus, said one of the rabbit monsters who ran in, there's no one else who can move. You're the only one left. You're the only one who could break the barrier. It was so much to take in. His brother, his kingdom. On top of that, his curse to remain underground and yet to be the only one who could free them. The sound of the human's groan brought him back to the moment. He turned to them as they tried to smile through the blur of yellow. They should be free, they whispered. A bright red soul appeared above them. Papyrus gasped, reaching for it quickly before it could shatter. The human was trying to help them? His brother hadn't turned to dust, which meant he was still alive. Papyrus decided he would tend to the matter of the immobilized as soon as the others could get past the barrier. The 6 human souls were brought before the skeleton warrior, and he absorbed them all, gaining the power onto a god. His size grew, bones stretched and extended, wings and extra limbs appeared. Papyrus took no time to evaluate his new form before turning to shatter the barrier. But there were no cheers, no celebration. The few survivors who were left looked to him, uncertain what to do. You are free now, but where you go I cannot follow, he said, sworn to keep the promise of his punishment. Reluctantly, the survivors would go, leaving the god warrior alone in a kingdom of flowers. When the last of them had gone from sight, he turned back to look over his brother. He tried to speak with him, ask him why he couldn't trust him in the inn, searching for answers for the flowers that even plagued his new form. But no matter what, Sans was incapable of responding. Papyrus wrapped his arms and wings around his brother and the human, holding them both for the longest time. Then came the static, the strange white noises. Tears fell from his skull as Papyrus lifted his head, looking around. What were those lines? Strange long boxes appeared in and out of his vision. Words, numbers, symbols, all scrambled together, appearing in and out with unnatural colors. Red strings pierced the walls like needles and began to pull on reality itself, revealing white spaces in between. Papyrus stood as he heard the distorted voice of Sans echoing around him. Turning back towards the exit, a skeleton stood. It looked like Sans, but not quite. White coat, a red scarf, blue and red melting eye sockets. Words and numbers flickered in and out around him. Who are you? Papyrus summoned a great sword into his hand. Something akin to laughing cut in and out as the demonic skeleton grinned, blood dripping from his teeth. No, not him. You are not my brother, not Papyrus. There was no time to prepare. The red strings came from every side, grabbing at the warrior's new wings and limbs. What? Unhand me! Papyrus roared. He pulled against the strings which stung and cut into his bones. But as he did, he watched as part of his reality was sliced and disappeared. All around him, bizarre strings surrounded his vision. He felt one, 2 of the human souls ripped from his body and shattered. The strange, corrupted Sans teleported in front of him, swinging bloody bones in his hands. Papyrus swung his blade just in time, slicing through the strange form of the skeleton. Its unnatural screams pierced his skull. Still, he kept swinging the blade madly, attempting to cut himself down. When his feet found something of ground again, he looked back to where the human and his Sans rested. But just as he reached out to them, they both dissolved into boxes of code, leaving behind nothing but a few fallen petals. Sans, no! Papyrus screamed, scrambling to the spot. But the red string seized him again. Papyrus could see his own blood dripping as 3 more souls were ripped and shattered, all that was left of his world dissolving to a white void around him. The demon appeared before him again, a terrible mess of those odd boxes covering the wound where Papyrus sliced. Hey, that's rude. Gasping, the warrior didn't think he had time to recover before he was torn to shreds. He reached out, summoning the reset, and was about to... A bone pierced his arm, forcing his hand away. The demon grabbed his jaw, throwing his neck back. How is this creature so strong? Papyrus had the human souls on his side, and he still felt like he was being sliced like butter. He could feel the corrupted code moving in and out of his form until it forced out the two remaining souls, scattering them as well. Papyrus, let's try again, the demon said, lifting up a bone spite filled with the strange numbers running within it. Sans? There was pain, a deep sorrow Papyrus felt from this creature that resonated with his own. He felt the spike embed into his chest, his body flooded with the strange numbers and code, threatening to implode his mortal form. His mind glimpsed remnants of himself and Sans, across different worlds and different times, but none of them complete. How did he die? He barely managed to say. The demon's face fell, a small glimmer of recognition and horror. Only for a split second did Papyrus recognize something of his brother's face on the creature, until something struck him, creating a loud buzzing sound. Light flickered and flashed through the demon as it screamed. Its strings were loosened, nearly dropping Papyrus to the ground. In a daze, he shook his head, meeting the face of a new skeleton. This one had a vague resemblance to himself, but wore some kind of white uniform. Are you all right? Don't try to move, he said. You! The demon screamed, looking far more chaotic than before as it glared down at them. The new skeleton drew forth a taser rod, aiming at the demon as it sparked threateningly. Skep, status report, a woman's voice came through a black box on his shoulder. He grabbed it and spoke into it. The fatal error instance is attacking a flower-filled papyrus variant, he said, then called up to the creature. I advise you to back down at once. Fatal error. This instance has an infectious code. Please make sure the victim is clean before extraction, said the box. As they spoke, Papyrus grabbed the bone stake in his chest, ripping it out. He coughed as blood flowed from the wound in his mouth. The skeleton called Skep looked back to him in shock. Hey, don't! But the demon charged, filled with rage. Skep swung the rod at a pair of strings coming for them, sending a shock at the glitching skeleton. Fatal's not backing down. My target is fatally wounded. I need an extraction now. Papyrus felt the other skeleton bend down, wrapping an arm around his waist. Though he could tell Skep was there to help, everything had happened so fast, he wasn't sure of the right thing to do. Both of these beings were from beyond his world of understanding. Approved for quarantine, room G44. Prepare for extraction in 3. Several glitchy gaster blasters appeared, charging their attacks. 2, 1. Papyrus felt the edge of the blaster's energy reach them before they were teleported into a strange white room. He hadn't the energy to understand where he was or why. Blacking out, Papyrus fell into Skep's arms. And that's the end of what I wrote for that AU.
Does a mighty dab. Yeah.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed. Bye-bye.